Please. Okay. Hello, Lily. How are you?
Fine, and you?
Well, thank you for asking. I'm pretty well. And how happy were you with your games? I've seen you played some games, and how did you like them?
It was okay. I won 37 points.
Well, yeah, 37 points is a fine result, especially given that you are a beginner. And about your homework, I've seen that you've done your homework, and well, it was very good. Everything was correct, and so I'm very happy. I hope you're happy too. And today we are going to continue our endgame study. You remember that I told you that Jose Capablanca, the former world champion from Cuba, said that studying endgames will take you to a higher chess level than just studying opening variations. And well, that's what I want my students to realize, and so that they would focus on what's really important. And end games are really important. Today we have a theoretical end game again. This time it's a bit more complicated than last time, but it's going to be easy for you. I'm sure I've seen the way that you grasp everything around chessboard, so I'm quite confident that you will do this very, very well. So what is the end game today? You're going to learn how to maintain a draw when you have a king and the rook against your opponent's king, pawn, and the rook. So your opponent is up one pawn, and his plan, of course, is to promote that pawn, which is currently on d4, to promote it on d1, get a queen, and so beat you. But of course, you are going to try not to lose the game. And a good news for you is that there is a forced pattern of moves that will secure that you get a draw. Another good thing about this position, concrete, is that you have the move, or white has the move. If white has the move in this position and white knows what to do, it's always going to be a draw. Black is never going to be able to promote. The first thing that you have to do here is to move your rook to the third rank. Tell me, Lily, do you remember the wire from our last lesson?
Yes, I do.
Ah, so the wire was very important in the lesson when we learned how to checkmate the opponent having a rook or a queen against his bear king, because the wire was well, the thing that kept him from getting out of the end of the board. Here, the wire has similar but a bit different meaning for us. We are going to establish a wire again by playing our rook to the third rank, and now our wire, I'm sure that you know this, is here on the third rank. So the only piece in chess that cannot legally step into a attacked or beaten square is the king. And this is very important in this endgame because, well, your opponent's king wants to get into the opposition with your king and then allow his rook to checkmate you along the last rank. But when we are able to place our rook on the third rank, now that we are white, or if we were black on the sixth rank, prevents his king from getting well on that rank and well making some checkmate threats. Uh, so first part of our plan has been achieved by merely placing our rook on the third rank. And now we have well, way to answer every move that he can make. Let's say our opponent checks your king. There's a logical move that you should make here. It's hard to make a real mistake, but the best move here would be to just put your king on d2 because it stands in way of black's pawn and well guards the promotion square. In order to win this, black would have to pass your king and get their pawn here on d1, promote to a queen, and then we win against you. But you are going to not let that happen unless your opponent checks you like this when you're just going to retreat vertically one step down, you have just one type of moves to make. Let's say he moves his rook somewhere else. You are just going to move your rook along the third rank, of course, being very careful not to get your rook captured. You just find a square which is safe like this and put it there. If he moves his king, again, you just find a safe square and put it there. Let's say he moves the king around, well, yeah, another safe square for you. Maintaining the wire all the time, that's very, very important. Of course, you are not going to allow yourself to make such a mistake that to put a rook on a beaten square so that they can capture the rook, and of course then you would be in a totally lost position. But I'm sure that you are going to be able to find a good way for your rook to find some square along the third rank. And that's what you're going to do through all eternity, unless your opponent puts their pawn on the third rank, on the rank of your wire. So regardless of how many moves with their king and their rook they make, you are not going to think about anything else but moving your rook along the third rank. And then they will have no way of progressing, making progress. So to be able to try to beat you, they will have to try to push their pawn. In endgames, especially pawn and rook endgames, you can the only good moves are, other than centralizing your king, pushing your pawn or attacking your opponent's pawns. In this case, you don't have any pawns, so they cannot attack your pawns. And if they want to make progress, they must push their pawn. But you are here to prevent that, to prevent them to do that in a favorable way for them. So, knowing that what you now know, and since I believe you would always keep your rook on the third rank until they move their pawn there to that rank. Okay, now they're trying to break your wire, and then there's only one good reaction, and that reaction is playing your rook on the opposite side of the board. Or when we observe this in two dimensions, such as chess.com's classroom, then on the top of the board. And now, of course, whatever they play, if it's not a check, well, then you have your way of continuing. I guess they'd try to make a checkmate threat here, because now if you make a bad move, such as attacking their pawn, then you would be facing a checkmate along the last rank, and their pawn is controlling these squares, king is controlling these squares, and of course their rook controls the entire third rank, and so this would be a checkmate. That's something that lurks upon you, so that you have to be careful. Well, if they make something else than a check, well, it's time for you to keep harassing their king. Check for the king, and they have to, of course, move the king. Let's say here, you just keep checking the king. You don't worry about anything else. Just keep checking the king. How long, you might ask? Well, as long as it takes. When you check them, since you are playing this for a draw, you can hope to win because you're material down. But the draw is very satisfactory at this position. You're just going to keep checking them. Well, if it takes all day, then all day. Well, it won't, because in 50 moves, if no pawns are moved, you're going to have a draw by declaration. So just keep checking the king. At some point, they might, got fed up with you checking their king, and they might try to go approach your rook with their king, hoping that you will make a mistake and allow them to capture your rook. And well, now it's a very important part of the plan, and you have to see that their king moving up towards your rook has made distance between the king and the pawn of two squares. These red squares that you can now see, two of them. And so you are now going to stop checking the king, but you are going to attack the pawn. And why is it very important to attack the pawn? Well, it's very important because you are now uh, uh, attacking the pawn, which cannot be saved by the king. The king is not in time to get there because there are two squares between the pawn and the king. If it was just one square and then you attack the pawn, the king could go back and save it. Is this clear, Lily?
Yes, totally.
Okay, that's great. Now, the only way that he can actually save his pawn is by playing the rook to the third rank, defending the pawn. Now, you have one attacker, he's got one defender, and we have learned that in order to successfully make a capture, we need, in most cases, to have more attackers than he has defenders. And that's why we are going to add another attacker. That attacker will be our king. King's role in endgames is very important as kings get to support their own pawns if they have any and attack or block opponents' pawns. That's very important. Now we have two attackers, the king and the rook, and he only has one defender. That's the rook. That means that he cannot successfully defend the pawn because if he, let's say, moves the king somewhere, you're gonna capture this pawn, and they can either recapture with the rook, in which case you would capture it with your king, and that would be a draw with due to the insufficient material, or they can abandon the pawn. Well, there is one move that they can try to make. Now, Lily, I would like to ask you to closely observe this position. If you need, take a couple of seconds, 10, 20 seconds, and then find me the drawing move.
Okay. Rook takes.
Rook takes. That's actually correct, but why not king?
Because rook check.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm happy that you found it, even though we are not working so long together, but I've seen that you've got talent and a good set of brains on your shoulders. Many of my beginning students make the mistake of capturing with the king because the king is closer and it's so self-inviting. They just capture it and they say, okay, I've now managed to take his pawn and it's a draw. But as you finally noticed, now the rook can come here and x-ray your rook through your king, of course checking the king. King has to go away and then the rook would fall, and of course this would be the position from our last lesson, but in his favor, so you would be a losing party. Of course, if you know what you know, and as you said, you capture with the rook, that is the drawing move, because now you both have a rook and the king, and there's really nothing that can be done here. Of course, I know an exception to this rule, and as we always do finish our lessons with a funny story about old chess players, there's a story about Aaron Nimzovich, who was a great chess player. Some people think, well, not just some, many people think that he had a world champion quality, but in his time it was a bit different. And now you had to be able to find sponsors and money for the prizes in order to be an eligible world chess champion challenger. So he couldn't do that, and he never got the opportunity to play a world championship match, but he had some great results in tournaments, and he has left us a great book, My System, The Blockade, which I recommend to my advanced students. I'm sure that you will be one of them in, let's say, a year's time. But what did happen in a similar position like this one? There were some pawns as well. It was a dead draw. And Nimzovich played the tournament. He needed a win in order to win the tournament. And his opponent offered a draw in a really totally dead draw position. But Nimzovich did not need the half point. He wanted the full point. And so he refused the draw and just played some moves with his rook. And the opponent actually got very frustrated with what Nimzovich did. And then he just kept playing his rook back and forth. and Nimzovich never lost his nerve. He just kept playing the rook, refusing the draws. And at some point, Nimzovich attacked the opponent's rook, but in such a way that his rook was free to capture, but the opponent, after let's say half an hour of moving his king left and right, just kept doing it by reflex. And when he played his king move, Nimzovich in cold blood just captured the rook and was winning at that point and won the tournament. So, Lily, hopefully you had a fine time in this lesson of ours, just like I did. And I hope to see you next week. As your homework, you have to, download the position that we have worked on and draw this against the strongest engine that you have for 5 consecutive times. Is that okay?
Okay, I will.
Okay, bye-bye, Lily.
Goodbye.